library.
You're not stuck because you lack potential. You're stuck because your mind has been trained to survive, not to grow. And there's a painful truth you've avoided for years. The life you want demands a version of you you've never met. Not a more motivated you, not a more intelligent you, a more stable you. A version of you that doesn't break the moment pressure rises. A version of you that doesn't drown in doubt. A version of you that can hold the weight of success without collapsing under your own emotions. That's the version we're building now. Chapter 1. The truth about the battle inside you. Let's begin with something uncomfortable. Most people think the world is blocking them, but the world is neutral. Opportunities don't disappear. They simply don't open for the mind that hesitates too much, doubts too loudly, or reacts too emotionally. If you feel stuck, it's not because the world is against you, it's because your internal system is untrained. And if you don't train it, every challenge will feel heavier than it actually is. Think about your own life. How many goals have you postponed because fear told you to wait? How many conversations have you avoided because discomfort whispered that you'd look foolish? How many opportunities faded because you convinced yourself the timing wasn't right? You didn't lose because of lack of potential. You lost because you believed the wrong voice inside your mind. A voice built years ago from small failures, careless comments, uncomfortable memories, and misunderstood moments. I once coached a young man who felt invisible. Brilliant ideas, good heart, real ambition, but every time he opened his mouth, doubt choked his confidence. He believed he was shy. He wasn't shy. He was carrying an old emotional wound from childhood when he was laughed at for giving the wrong answer in school. One moment, one memory, and for years his brain used that single experience as a template for every new situation. He wasn't broken, he was untrained. And once he understood that his reaction had nothing to do with who he truly was, he began to rebuild. You have your own version of that story. Something small that planted a seed of hesitation, a moment that made you shrink, a moment that shaped how you see yourself. You didn't choose that story, but you've been living inside it like a box that became too comfortable, and you forgot you could step out of it anytime. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how quickly your mind creates negative predictions? You imagine a failure before you even try. You picture people judging you before they even see you. You rehearse the worst-case scenario even when nothing has gone wrong yet. Why do you think that happens? Because the brain is designed for survival. It would rather protect you from embarrassment than push you towards growth. It would rather keep you small and safe than big and exposed. But here's the paradox. The more your mind tries to protect you, the smaller your life becomes. Let's take a simple example. Imagine you're offered a new opportunity, a new job, a project, a chance to meet new people. You feel excitement for 2 seconds, then fear takes the microphone. What if you fail? What if you're not ready? What if you embarrass yourself? What if people think you're trying too hard? And suddenly, you retreat. Not because you lack ability, but because the mind reacts faster than your courage does. This is the silent war inside you. Logic versus emotion. Vision versus fear. Potential versus programming. And you've spent most of your life letting the wrong side win. But let me show you something powerful. Your fear is not predicting the future. It's remembering the past. It's not trying to destroy you. It's trying to protect you using outdated information. And once you learn to separate fear from fact, something extraordinary happens. You stop taking your emotions as commands. You start seeing them as signals. 2.
Most people think confidence means eliminating fear. That's wrong. Real confidence is learning to move while fear walks next to you but doesn't lead. It's the quiet realization that discomfort is not danger, that shaking hands don't mean failure, that doubt doesn't mean stop. It means pay attention and move deliberately. Let me give you another micro story. A young woman wanted to start content creation, but she couldn't post a single video. She recorded 10, deleted all 10. She told herself she didn't look good enough, didn't sound confident enough, didn't have the right gear. But when I asked her one question, everything changed. What story are you repeating in your head each time you try to create something? She paused, then she whispered, "People will laugh at me." And what triggered that belief? A moment from years earlier when she overheard her classmates mocking someone else's video. She carried that moment into adulthood as if it were a universal truth. Once she understood that her fear came from a teenage memory, not from the present, she posted her first video. It wasn't perfect, but she grew, and with each video, she rewired her narrative. The patterns in your mind also came from somewhere. And right now, you have a choice. Will you keep obeying the old programming, or will you become conscious enough to rewrite it? Let me make this interactive. Imagine the strongest version of yourself, the version you admire, the version that speaks clearly, makes decisions fast, moves with intention, and doesn't collapse under pressure. What would that version of you do today that you've been avoiding? Say it out loud. Feel the difference between the current you and the future you. That gap is not talent, it's not luck, it's mental training. Building an untouchable mind doesn't come from reading quotes or listening to motivation. It comes from understanding the architecture of your reactions. It comes from questioning your automatic thoughts. It comes from breaking the link between emotion and action. It comes from choosing clarity over chaos, purpose over panic, direction over hesitation. And here is the truth most people never hear. You don't need to fix yourself. There is nothing wrong with you. You simply need to unlearn the patterns that were never yours to keep. You need to stop giving fear a seat at the head of the table. You need to stop negotiating with doubt. You need to stop letting emotional storms decide the direction of your life. Because the moment your mind becomes stronger than your emotions, your life expands. You think clearer, you act faster, you move strategically, you speak with calm certainty. People feel the shift without you saying a word. A powerful inner world creates a powerful outer world. So here is your new mission for the week ahead. Each time you feel hesitation, pause. Don't act, don't retreat, don't rush, just observe. Feel the emotion without obeying it. Ask yourself one question: is this fear protecting me or limiting me? And the moment you identify the difference, you'll take your power back. This is the beginning of your transformation. This is the moment you stop being shaped by old memories and start being shaped by intention. This is where the real you finally emerges.
You keep wondering why confidence feels unstable. Some days you feel unstoppable, other days you question everything. You think it's inconsistency, but it's not. It's simply this: the voice inside your head was never trained to support you. It reacts before you think. It protects instead of guiding. And until you strengthen that inner voice, your external life will continue to feel uncertain, fragile, and unpredictable. Chapter 2.
Building the voice that leads your life. Your inner voice is the quiet force that determines everything about your behavior. It affects your decisions, your ambition, your reactions, your relationships, your money, your career, your discipline. Before you act, you think. Before you think, you feel. Before you feel, your inner voice interprets the world for you. And the quality of that interpretation decides the quality of your life. Let me ask you something. When you face a challenge, what is the first sentence that appears in your mind? Be honest. Is it a sentence that stabilizes you or destabilizes you? Does it say, you can handle it? Or does it whisper that you're not ready? Most young adults unknowingly live with an inner voice that weakens them at the worst possible moments, not because they lack potential, but because no one taught them how to train their inner dialogue. A strong inner voice doesn't speak louder, it speaks clearer. It's calm, structured, precise. It doesn't panic, it doesn't catastrophize, it doesn't interpret small problems as life-ending disasters. It guides you like a mentor, firm, wise, grounded. And once you build that voice, your entire identity transforms. Let me show you the difference through a simple example. Imagine you're about to start a new project. The untrained mind says, "This is too big. What if I fail? Someone else could do it better. Maybe later." The trained inner voice says, "One step at a time. Learn as you go. You're capable. You've handled harder things." Notice how the two voices create two different futures before any action has even been taken. One creates hesitation, the other creates momentum. Another example. You receive unexpected criticism. The untrained mind reacts instantly. "They hit me. I must be doing something wrong. Maybe I should stop." The trained voice asks, "Is there something useful here? If yes, I'll grow. If not, I'll move on." That's emotional leadership, and people with a strong inner voice don't collapse under feedback. They extract value from it. Let's go deeper. Your inner voice is shaped by repetition. Every sentence you've believed for years has carved a pathway in your brain. If those sentences were negative, your default reactions became negative. If those sentences were fearful, your default behavior became fearful. But the moment you consciously change the sentences, the pathways begin to shift, and a new identity starts forming beneath the surface. This isn't positive thinking, this is neural training. Let me give you a real story. A young man I coached always said, "I'm terrible under pressure." Every tough moment made him tense. His shoulders tightened, his thoughts raced. He avoided difficult tasks because his identity didn't support them. So I made him practice one simple sentence every time pressure appeared. I adapt quickly. It felt strange at first, but he repeated it anyway. After a few days, he felt calmer. After a few weeks, he handled challenges differently. After a few months, he became the person who truly adapted quickly. The sentence became identity. The identity became behavior. The behavior became confidence. Now let me ask you directly. What is the strongest sentence that has shaped your life so far? Think for a moment. Is it a sentence of strength or a sentence of limitation? Once you recognize it, you gain control, because the moment you identify the sentence, you can rewrite it. 2. Let's explore another layer. Your inner voice doesn't just affect your personal life, it affects your money. People with a weak voice spend impulsively because emotions lead. People with a strong voice spend intentionally because clarity leads. It affects your career. A fragile voice makes you chase approval. A strong voice makes you chase growth. It affects your relationships. A chaotic voice reacts emotionally. A stable voice communicates calmly, even in conflict. Think about your last argument or disagreement. Did your inner voice calm you or inflame you? Did it help you understand or push you to win? The inner voice that leads you during conflict becomes the architect of your relationships. But here comes a deeper truth. Your inner voice influences how others perceive you. Confidence isn't what you show. It's what you feel just before you speak. People feel the energy behind your words. They can sense hesitation, insecurity, or clarity before you finish a sentence. When your inner voice stabilizes you, your presence changes. You sound different. You move different. You connect different. That's why powerful people seem calm, even in chaos. Their inner voice holds them together when others fall apart. Let's make this practical. Today, I want you to become aware of 3 moments: when you wake up, when you face difficulty, and when you end your day. These 3 transitions shape your identity more than you think. In the morning, your inner voice sets the tone. If the first sentence in your mind is, "I'm tired," or "I don't want to do this," your day becomes heavy. If you choose a sentence like, "Today I move with intention," everything aligns differently. During difficulty, your inner voice decides the future. Do you spiral or do you stabilize? Try this tomorrow. When something unexpected happens, pause. Breathe. Then say something grounded, something simple, something true. Something like, "I can handle this. This is manageable. I will respond, not react." At night, your inner voice closes the day. Most people fall asleep replaying mistakes. Strong minds end the day with direction. They review, they learn, they release, they reset. They remind themselves that tomorrow is another chance to lead their life with clarity. Now let me give you a final micro-story for this chapter. A young woman wanted to improve her communication skills. She practiced speaking in front of a mirror, she watched videos, but every time she tried to speak to someone important, her voice cracked, her hands shook, her mind froze. When we spoke, I realized the issue wasn't communication, it was internal language. She kept repeating to herself, "I'm not a good speaker." So every attempt became a self-fulfilling prophecy. We replaced that sentence with, "I speak clearly and calmly." She practiced it quietly each morning. Within weeks, her communication transformed. People complimented her clarity. She didn't learn new speaking techniques. She rewired her identity. This is what I want for you. A voice that lifts you, a voice that guides you, a voice that calms you, a voice that protects your potential instead of your fears, a voice that leads your entire life with quiet strength. Building that voice takes awareness, consistency, and intention. But once you build it, nothing outside you can intimidate you again. You become steady. You become grounded. You become someone whose presence alone inspires trust. And that is the heart of dangerous confidence. A confidence built inside, not borrowed from the world. Subscribe to the Millionaire Library, and if you want to go deeper, I left a full playlist waiting for you in the description.
You think you're tired because life is hard, but most of your exhaustion comes from something else. You're constantly fighting yourself, fighting your doubts, fighting your past, fighting the pressure to prove something. The real fatigue doesn't come from challenges, it comes from the invisible resistance inside your mind. And until you understand how identity shapes confidence, you'll keep burning energy in battles that don't matter. Chapter 3. Becoming the person your future needs. Identity is the root of confidence. Every action, decision, and habit you have today comes from the kind of person you believe you are. If you believe you're inconsistent, your habits reflect it. If you believe you're unlucky, your choices follow that belief. If you believe you're not ready, you wait for permission that never comes. Your identity is a silent compass. It pulls you toward certain behaviors and away from others without asking for your consent. And most people never update the compass they grew up with. Let me ask you a simple question. When you imagine the person you want to become,
Does that person look like who you are right now? Be honest. Does your current identity match the life you want? Or are you trying to build a millionaire life with a version of yourself that was shaped by fear, comparison, or survival? If the identity is outdated, the life will be too. Your identity forms from repeated moments. The compliments you received, the criticism that cut you, the failures you never digested, the expectations placed on you, the stories you told yourself after difficult moments. If you've heard for years that you're quiet, you'll speak less. If you've heard that you're not leadership material, you'll hesitate to step forward. Identity becomes a cage when you stop challenging it. Let me give you an example that changed someone's life. A young man I once mentored always said he was shy. He believed it deeply because his whole childhood he was called quiet. So every time he met someone new, his behavior aligned with that identity. He avoided eye contact, he waited for others to speak, he agreed even when he disagreed. Not because he lacked opinions, but because his identity didn't allow him to take space. One day, I asked him, "Who told you that you're shy?" He paused. Then he said, "I guess I told it to myself." That realization cracked the cage. We rebuilt a new identity. Not outgoing, not loud, just confident. Someone who speaks with intention. Someone who isn't afraid to be seen. And within months, people were shocked by the transformation. They said he changed. He didn't. He upgraded his identity. Identity is not fixed, but it becomes fixed if you never question it. That's why this chapter matters. Let's go deeper. Think about the last time you wanted to take a risk. Maybe start a business. Maybe message someone important. Maybe ask for a raise. What stopped you? Not the risk itself, the version of you analyzing the risk. A limited identity always exaggerates danger and underestimates capacity. A powerful identity evaluates opportunities calmly. It knows fear is information, not a warning to retreat. It knows growth requires courage. It knows you can adapt even when the path is unclear. Your identity also affects how you handle money. A scarce identity spends emotionally. A wealthy identity spends intentionally. A fragile identity avoids investing. A confident identity studies, learns, and acts with discipline. Your financial life is not just about strategy, it's about who you believe yourself to be when making decisions. If you see yourself as someone who's always behind, you'll keep acting from urgency. If you see yourself as someone who builds long-term wealth, your decisions reflect patience and clarity. Now let's talk about relationships. Identity shapes how you show up. If you believe you're hard to love, you'll tolerate disrespect or emotional chaos. If you believe you're not enough, you'll try to prove your worth instead of expressing your needs. When your identity is weak, relationships drain you because you're constantly performing. When your identity is strong, relationships become partnerships. You stop trying to be chosen, you start choosing.
Let me ask you something important. Who were you before the world told you who to be? Think back. Before school, before comparison, before expectations. There was a version of you that was curious, brave, imaginative, willing to try. That version still exists. It's covered, not gone. Confidence comes from reconnecting with that root identity, then building an upgraded version based on your goals. Let's make this concrete. One of the fastest ways to rebuild identity is through environment. You cannot think like a millionaire while living in a mindset built for survival. So ask yourself, who do you spend time with? What do you consume online? What conversations do you repeat? Your environment either reinforces your old identity or introduces new ones. If you surround yourself with people who fear growth,
you'll shrink without noticing. If you surround yourself with people who build, you will expand naturally. Identity is contagious. Another method is through promises. Not big ones, small ones. Your identity is shaped by the promises you keep or break with yourself. If you say you'll wake up early and you don't, you teach your mind that your words mean nothing. If you say you'll work on your craft and you avoid it, you teach your mind you're unreliable. But if you start with small commitments and honor them, your identity transforms. You become someone who does what they say, and that alone builds more confidence than motivational speeches ever will. Let's go even deeper. The identity you carry influences the meaning you assign to pain. A fragile identity sees pain as a threat. A strong identity sees pain as feedback. For example, a failed exam becomes "I'm stupid" for a fragile identity. For a strong identity, it becomes "I need a better method." A breakup becomes "No one will love me" for a weak identity. For a powerful identity, it becomes "not the right person." Pain doesn't define you. Your identity decides the meaning you attach to it. Here's a story that explains this better than theory. A young woman wanted to start a clothing brand. She launched her first collection and sold almost nothing. Her old identity said, "See, you're not meant for this." But she had begun building a new identity, so she asked better questions. Why didn't it sell? What can I improve? What did people respond to? Within a year, she had a profitable brand, not because she had perfect strategies, but because her identity stopped collapsing every time she faced difficulty. That's dangerous confidence, the ability to stay stable when circumstances shake. Now, I want to ask you something personal. If you stripped away your fears, the expectations of your family, the mistakes from your past, the labels people gave you, and the doubts you repeat, who would you be? Think about it. What qualities would return to you? What habits would feel natural? What goals would suddenly look possible? The real you is not the one shaped by insecurity. It's the one shaped by intention. And that's the identity you must build now. Let's finish this chapter strong. I want you to choose the identity that matches your future, not your past. The version of you who speaks clearly, who moves with purpose, who respects themselves, who makes decisions like someone who knows where they're going. The identity who doesn't shrink when life challenges them. The identity who leads their life instead of reacting to it. You're not becoming a different person. You're becoming the person you were supposed to be before the world made you forget. And once this identity stabilizes, your confidence becomes unshakable. You want confidence, but you avoid the very thing that builds it, discomfort. You chase the feeling of readiness, hoping one day it will arrive and make your next move easier. But readiness never comes. Not because you're weak, but because the brain is designed to protect you from anything unfamiliar. The truth is simple and harsh. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It's the ability to move while fear is still in the room. Chapter 4. Mastering Discomfort to Expand Your Life. Every ambitious young adult faces the same invisible barrier. You know what you want. You can see it. You imagine it. You dream about it at night. Yet when it's time to act, something inside pulls you back. That something is your comfort zone. It's warm. It's predictable. It's safe. But it's also the exact reason your life doesn't change. Let me ask you something. How often do you choose comfort over progress? Think carefully. How many opportunities have you ignored because they felt intimidating? How many messages you didn't send, risks you didn't take, ideas you didn't pursue? Not because you lacked ability, but because the discomfort felt too sharp. If you're honest, you'll realize most of your limitations are maintained, not imposed. You keep them alive by staying comfortable. Confidence grows the moment you stop seeing discomfort as a threat and start seeing it as a tool. Discomfort is the gym of the mind, the place where resilience is built, where self-trust is formed, where identity expands. People who master discomfort don't become fearless. They become familiar with fear. And what you no longer fear. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine you want to improve your communication skills. The logical step is to speak more. But speaking exposes you. You risk judgment. You risk embarrassment. So you avoid it. You stay silent. And silence becomes your habit. But if you intentionally speak in uncomfortable situations, something changes. Your voice becomes steadier. Your thoughts become clearer. Your presence grows. Discomfort stops weakening you. It starts shaping you. Another example. You want to make more money. You know you need to develop new skills, take new responsibilities, talk to new people. But that requires discomfort. Learning something new makes you feel incompetent at first. Asking for a raise feels risky. Starting a business feels terrifying. So you stay where you are. But the irony is that the wealth you want sits on the other side of the discomfort you avoid. Let me tell you a quick story. A young man I worked with wanted to become financially independent. He read books, watched videos, took notes, but he didn't act. Every idea felt too big, too uncertain, too uncomfortable. One day I asked him, what if the only difference between the life you want and the life you have is the amount of discomfort you're willing to endure? He didn't answer, but he understood. He started small, one uncomfortable action per day, a difficult conversation, a new skill, a small investment, a tiny risk. Within a year, his entire identity shifted. His confidence grew, his income grew, his opportunities multiplied. Not because he became smarter, but because he became willing. Discomfort is the doorway to expansion. You cannot grow your confidence inside the same environment that created your insecurities. You must deliberately step into experiences that stretch you. Not violently, not recklessly, gradually, consistently, intentionally. Now let's talk psychology. The brain is designed to repeat what feels safe. It sees discomfort as danger, even when you're not in danger. That's why your heart races before a presentation. That's why your hands feel warm before talking to someone you admire. That's why your mind creates excuses when an opportunity appears. But here's the key. Discomfort doesn't mean stop. It means adapt. The more you expose yourself to it, the more your brain rewires. What was once terrifying becomes normal. What was once normal becomes easy. And what becomes easy becomes part of your identity. Let me ask you something interactive. Think of an area in your life where you've been stuck. Now ask yourself this question. What discomfort am I avoiding? Be brutally honest. Is it rejection, criticism, uncertainty, failure, loss of control? Once you identify the discomfort you fear, you unlock the path forward. Because behind every fear is a skill. Behind every hesitation is a breakthrough. Behind every avoidance is a future version of you waiting to be built. Let's go deeper into relationships. Discomfort is essential there too. It's uncomfortable to express your feelings. It's uncomfortable to set boundaries. It's uncomfortable to say no. But people with poor boundaries end up exhausted. People who avoid real conversations end up misunderstood. People who chase validation end up invisible. The harder path in the moment is always the path that strengthens you long term. Now, career. Discomfort is the engine of advancement. Anyone can stay employed. Few grow. Few lead. Few rise. The ones who rise are the ones who take responsibility before they feel ready, who speak even when their voice shakes, who volunteer for challenges others avoid, who initiate change instead of waiting for permission. Confidence in your career doesn't come from your resume, it comes from your tolerance for discomfort. Let me give you another micro story. A young woman wanted to become a leader in her company, but she felt invisible. She believed others were more talented, more charismatic, more experienced. Her identity was shrinking. One day, she decided to face a discomfort she had avoided for years, taking initiative publicly. She proposed a project at a team meeting. Her voice trembled, but she did it. The project was approved. 6 months later, she was promoted. Not because she knew more, but because she dared more. This is the pattern. Discomfort creates growth. Growth creates identity. Identity creates confidence. And confidence creates opportunities. Now think about your life. What if everything you want is already available, but hidden behind a doorway you've been too afraid to open? What if your next level isn't about learning more, but about stepping into situations you've been avoiding? What if the world is waiting for you to make one uncomfortable decision? Let's make this actionable. I want you to adopt a simple rule. Do one uncomfortable thing every day. Not something extreme, something small but meaningful. Speak when you would stay silent. Learn when you would procrastinate. Ask when you would hesitate. Move when you would freeze. These daily micro-challenges create macro transformation. They train your mind to stop treating discomfort as danger. They turn fear into fuel. Let me ask you one final question for this chapter. If you lived the next 30 days avoiding every comfort-based decision, how different would your life look? Sit with that thought, because the life you want will not come from comfort. It will come from courage. You must expand your world by expanding your tolerance for uncertainty. And once you master discomfort, you become someone others admire, not because you're fearless, but because you move anyway. That is the essence of dangerous confidence. Not loud, not arrogant, just quietly unstoppable. You keep telling yourself that you'll grow when life calms down, when things get easier, when you have more time, more money, more clarity. But life never slows down for you. And the truth you don't want to hear is this: you're not waiting for the right moment, you're avoiding responsibility disguised as timing. You're not lacking motivation, you're lacking ownership. And until you claim full responsibility for every part of your life, confidence will always be fragile. Chapter 5. Radical Responsibility and the Power of Self-Leadership. Every powerful person you admire has one thing in common. They take ownership of their life. Not partially, not selectively, fully. They don't blame circumstances. They don't wait for permission. They don't rely on motivation. They lead themselves before anyone else does. And that is the foundation of dangerous confidence. Let me ask you something honest. When something goes wrong, what's your first instinct? Do you look for someone to blame? Or do you ask yourself, what can I control here? That single question reveals the difference between people who rise and people who remain stuck. because confidence does not grow in the mind of someone who feels powerless. Confidence grows when you consistently prove to yourself that you can influence your reality. Responsibility is not about guilt, it's about power. When you blame, you give your power away. When you take responsibility, you take your power back. Think about money. If you believe you're broke because of the economy, you lose control. If you believe you're broke because you never learned proper financial skills, you gain control. You can study, you can adapt, you can grow. Responsibility is freedom disguised as pressure. Let me give you a micro story. A young man lost his job and spent months complaining about how unfair life was. He blamed his boss, he blamed the market, he blamed society. He felt smaller each day. Then one day, someone asked him a question that shattered his worldview. What part of this situation is still under your control? He didn't answer at first, but slowly he realized the truth. He could learn new skills. He could build a portfolio. He could network. He could shift direction. Within a year, he had doubled his income. Nothing changed except one thing. He stopped waiting for life to save him and started leading his life. Responsibility is uncomfortable because it forces you to confront the gap between who you are and who you want to be. But this confrontation is necessary. It's where growth begins. If you want a better body, you take responsibility for your routine. If you want better relationships, you take responsibility for how you communicate. If you want more money, you take responsibility for your financial habits. Confidence comes when you realize your future is not random, it's built. Let's go deeper psychologically. Humans naturally avoid responsibility because responsibility creates pressure, and pressure reveals weakness. That's why people prefer distractions, entertainment, overthinking, excuses. These things protect the ego by hiding the truth that if you don't put in the work, nothing happens. But the ego that avoids responsibility also avoids achievement, avoids mastery, avoids growth. You cannot escape responsibility and build confidence at the same time. Now, think about your identity. When you claim responsibility, your identity expands. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of life. You start seeing yourself as a creator of outcomes. That subtle shift shapes your entire worldview. Suddenly, problems become puzzles, failures become feedback, obstacles become opportunities. Responsibility rewires your perception. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever met someone who constantly blames others? How do they make you feel? Drained, defensive, avoidant? Now, think of someone who takes ownership. Someone who says, "I made a mistake, and here's how I'll fix it." Or, "This is my responsibility, let me handle it." That energy commands respect. It builds trust. It creates presence. People with confidence don't just lead themselves, they naturally lead others.
Responsibility also sharpens your emotional intelligence. When you take ownership of your reactions instead of blaming people for how you feel, you grow rapidly. Instead of saying, "They made me angry," you say, "I let myself react with anger. Now I will choose a better response." That is maturity. That is leadership. And that level of responsibility makes you calm under pressure, because you know you can control yourself even when you cannot control others. Now let's link this to your goals. Every goal you have requires a level of responsibility you haven't yet mastered. That's why the goal feels big. Not because it is big, but because you haven't grown into the person capable of holding it. This chapter is about becoming that person. Someone who doesn't wait for luck. Someone who doesn't hope for change. Someone who builds. Let me give you another micro story. A young woman wanted to become a content creator. She kept saying she didn't have the right equipment, the right environment, the right time. She told herself she needed things that weren't essential. One day, she decided to take ownership. She recorded with her phone. She posted imperfect videos. She stayed consistent. She learned quickly. Today, she's earning more than in her previous job, not because she suddenly became talented, because she stopped outsourcing responsibility to her circumstances. Responsibility creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence creates results. Let me challenge you directly. Think of a goal you want. Now ask yourself 3 questions. What am I avoiding? What am I blaming? What am I waiting for? If your future self could speak to you right now, what would they say? Probably something simple and direct. Something like, stop delaying your life. You're capable of more than you allow yourself to be. Let's make this practical. Choose one area of your life where you'll take full responsibility starting today. It could be your fitness, your money, your skills, your relationships. Commit to one action that reflects ownership. A small action, a clear action, something you can't hide from, something you can't excuse. That one action will create a ripple of confidence. To end this chapter, I want to speak to your potential. You were not born to be passive. You were not born to be average. You were born with strengths that you've barely explored. Responsibility is not a burden. It's a path that transforms your identity, a path that reveals what you're truly capable of, a path that builds a level of confidence the world respects. Once you take ownership of your life, no one's opinion can limit you. No failure can break you. No challenge can intimidate you. Because you know that whatever happens, you have the power to respond, adapt, and rise. That is dangerous confidence. Quiet, steady, unshakable.